You are about to enter the courtroom of Judge Timothy Snavely. The cases are real. The people are assumed to be real until they are deemed unreal. This is Judge Timmy. The plaintiff, the devil's advocate, is suing a Christian over the belligerent claiming of the existence of God, which resulted in the defendant condemning the plaintiff to an eternity in hell. And the devil's advocate did not like that. If you haven't seen the previous 2 episodes of my Does God Exist trilogy, I highly recommend that you watch those 2 videos first, because it gives an in-depth trial of what the best evidence and experiences are for the Christian God from my point of view. I'll put a playlist in the description and in a comment below that will contain the relevant videos that lead up to the actual verdict given at the end of this video. You see, Mr. Christian shifts his position to that of a deist early on in this episode, and it doesn't really make sense whenever this video is watched solo. But if you insist on being confused, here's a laughable straw man's recap of what has happened in the past 2 episodes. All rise. I object. God met man in a cave. I was, in fact, in those caves. Exhibit A. God cannot sin. It is against his nature. The character of God is inconsequential. It is a history book, but it's a lot more than a history book. Holy shnikes, what the heck is this? The fallible humans might have made a little bit of mistakes along the way. You will find him when you seek him with all of your heart. Hee hee hee, I get to be like a little devil on your shoulder. I accepted Jesus into my heart at the ripe old age of 2 years old. Is it possible that you were brainwashed? An infinite God gave up his weekend in hell to save you. What? It feels like an extra surge of energy. 2 different powers. I don't know what powers you're pulling out of your butt. A whole inch shorter than the other. Pain! You're bluffing. I'm healed! You're really wearing me down, Mr. Devil. We saw some weird stuff in the court today. Everything I know is a lie. You are me. Shut up, I'm in charge now. This is your last chance to go watch those last 2 episodes by yourself. Watch now or forever hold your peace. To the audience, to the jury, to my friends and family, I want you to listen very carefully. All rise! Sir, yes, sir! Ow. Sorry, Mr. Devil's Advocate, I will lower the volume down a little bit. And you can also sit back down. But today we are going to be giving the final statements from both the prosecution and the defense. And it will include some unique philosophical defenses for both sides. And I'll have the final verdict for you by the end. Mr. Devil's Advocate, if you wouldn't mind summarizing your case here? It would be my pleasure, Your Honor. At first I brought into question the validity of the holy book that Mr. Christian initially brought forth for the evidence of King Lord Yahweh, Abba, Allah, Adonai, Shaddai, Eloheim, Jehovah, the first and the last. Both the book and the believer hold contradictory and untestable claims about the nature of the great I Am. Like, God is claimed to be this all-loving deity who loves you in the grandest of unconditional love, but likewise allows for the eternal conscious torment of those who dare to commit the heinous crime of not believing in the deity. This necessarily gives the unconditional love of God the very important condition of needing to believe in order to receive this unconditional love. Conditional love. And do I need to remind the court that the Bible actually gives us an objective and replicatable test by which we can actually prove the existence of King Lord Yahweh. The Lord should be able to work through a great modern prophet to bring down fire from heaven, just like what Elijah did with the prophets of Baal. And yet this does not happen, and it's not because Jesus has already proven that Yahweh is the correct God and satiating his fire lust, and not because Yahweh is testing you on your faith in him. No. This easily replicatable fire from heaven does not happen because Yahweh does not exist, making all claims that are invoked by his authority false, null, void, and utterly meaningless. And this includes the claim that brought us here in the first place, Mr. Christian. The claim that I will be spending an eternity in hell. Hellfire threats need to be backed up by the authority of God himself, not by the authority of his henchmen. let God show up here in this courtroom to give some tantalizing objective evidence of his existence. And not just God, Yahweh God. Bring us some fire from heaven specifically invoked by the Christian God, and I will believe just as you do. Because it would really be a shame if you were worshiping the wrong one true God, Mr. Christian. Because what if the name of the one true God was actually named Rolf and only desired to be praised in his name alone? Would you praise the almighty Rolf? Or the almighty Geralt? Or Zeus or Bruce Almighty? Don't just prove the great I am. Prove that the great I am even identifies as a he and goes by the name either Yahweh or Jehovah or something like that. Because I can hear the almighty Karen making her demands from on high, but God the Father, on the other hand, seems rather silent. And beyond the evidence, these experiences that can be used to defend the existence of the Christian God, as you yourself admitted, Mr. Christian, those experiences can easily be replicated by me using nothing more than my own mind and my own faculties. If the judge and the jury are convinced by these meager experiences that the defense brought forth as proof for the existence of God, you should be more convinced by me, who is able to replicate these experiences without the use of any God. And for these claims of modern miracles, I can not only replicate them, but I can also tell you numerically how frequent they should be occurring, because the significance of it is actually no greater than what is found with the placebo effect. Citation is in the description. To all who would hear me, if you want to believe in God, that is fine. If you want to evangelize loving and community-based dogma that makes the individual greater and the community greater, that is fine. But if you want to proselytize non-believers with hateful, demeaning, and fear-inducing rhetoric, calling them sinners, fools, or otherwise hellbound, you will be met with firm resistance. The prosecution rests its case. And Mr. Christian, you can now end with your defense. You know, Judge, I've been thinking since our last meeting, and, how do I put this? I would like to soften my defense. What? Well, this is unprecedented. For the record, can you clarify what you mean when you say soften the defense? Do you mean that you are less confident in the existence of King Lord Yahweh? Or that you are less sure of any God existing? Or are you just recanting your original statement that condemns the devil's advocate to an eternity in hell? I'm not so sure myself, to be honest. Like, I know that God exists, and that he is a loving God, and that Jesus was a man who represents this God pretty well. But I have dissonance on the claim that Yahweh is necessarily the correct manifestation of this loving God. And on the claim that Mr. Devil's Advocate will go to eternity in hell due to his unbelief. Well, try to speak out your thoughts. I brought in the expert Iggy today, who may be of some help in this regard so that your case isn't completely obliterated. Wait a minute, it's only just been the three of us this entire time, Judge. Who the duck is this Iggy person?
Hi there, my name's Iggy, short for Ignostic. I'm a nerd who has learned so much that I discovered that making 100% certain Gnostic claims is almost certain to make you wrong at some degree. I mean, sure, we can't be between 95 and 99% confident in some things, and sure, we can be 100% confident in certain logical, philosophical statements, assuming that the axioms are true. But even then, Gödel's completeness theorem still states that it... Whoops! Sorry! Kinda got hot for the technicalities there. Anywho, if I do not know with 100% certainty after all of this knowledge searching, I sure as heck know that you guys don't know. So, Mr. Christian, how can I offer my services to you? Let's try to build your best case together, okay?
Objection, Your Honor. This is basically a complete reformulation of the entire defense. A defense, I might add, that the prosecution is not even prosecuting. This trial should be solely focused on the experience and the evidence of solely the Christian God, Yahweh. I'm going to have to overrule this objection, although I genuinely hear your concerns, Mr. Devil's Advocate. From my perspective, it appears that you have done your job so well over these past 2 sessions that you preemptively caused Mr. Christian over here to conclude that King Lord Yahweh in fact does not exist. That's what I think I heard anyway. Clarify me if I'm wrong, Mr. Christian. I mean, I wouldn't go that far that he definitely does not exist. I am just more agnostic than I was at the beginning of the trial. Hey Iggy, I might need your help on this one. What should my new stance be to help answer Judge Timmy?
Yes, Your Honor, my client is fully revoking the defense of King Lord Yahweh, Abba, Allah, Adonai, Shaddai, Eloheim, Jehovah, the first and the last. We would also like to sincerely apologize to the devil's advocate for any inconvenience of thought or action that the past Mr. Christian ever did on behalf of King Lord Yahweh. You see, Mr. Christian, it's a lot easier to defend the existence of God whenever you do not have any of these minute details clogging your theological background. It is a lot easier when you try to defend a vague and deistic God rather than a specific theistic God. You probably already do this a lot more often than you realize, like whenever you say the birds, the bees, and the trees are all proof of the existence of your one true theistic God. However, this evidence only shows us that there appears to be something rather than nothing, and nothing more. Saying that the tree is evidence for the existence of Yahweh is the equivalent of saying that a particular murder that you have stumbled across was definitely committed by Jeffrey Harvey Bundy. And that is such a ridiculous non-sequitur. It does not follow. It's a very specific claim. It requires extraordinary evidence to prove that Jeffrey Harvey Bundy did in fact commit that particular murder. Like, sure, maybe Jeffrey Harvey Bundy committed that murder, but I highly doubt it. More likely it was Ted Bundy. You see, the less specific qualitative aspects you try to give to God, the better. Any name, moral will, moral judgment, spoken word, or personality attribute attributed to any particular monotheistic God would be doomed to fail in a court of law. Just call the creator of everything that we call reality God, and go no further. I really am sorry, Mr. Devil's Advocate. Are you willing to prosecute a... What did he say? A deistic God.
Yeah, that. Would you want to prosecute a deistic interpretation of God instead? You see, that's the thing. I personally have no problem with you believing in a deistic God. That belief won't hurt anybody, and any emotions experienced by the belief in this deistic God can be known by the individual to not be a universal sign that should be dictated to everybody. To be frank, my job here is done. I personally have no stake in this case anymore. You can go your own way, Mr. Christian... Mr. Deist? The deist formerly known as Mr. Christian? The prosecution rests.
Wait, I got something good for you too, Mr. Devil's Advocate. I've got a foolproof case just for you that would make any God-fearing philosopher do a solid double take.
Hey, no fair, I object. Objection overruled. I asked Iggy to be here for this very reason, to help both of you. Would it be fair of me to not let Mr. Devil's Advocate also strengthen his case? Since we've already sifted through the empirical evidence and the witness testimonials, all that remains are the logical pieces of evidence for the both of you. And those pieces of evidence can and should be known. Okay, Iggy, I'll bite. But if I don't like how you present me, I'm going to have to play Devil's Advocate with you too, and not just the former Mr. Christian.
I'm on the case. First off, we need to solidify your null hypothesis to properly contend against Mr. Deist over here. By contrast, Mr. Deist would hypothesize that there is a being, who we could call a god, who took an active part in creating the universe. Correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So how would you construct a null hypothesis to properly contend against this hypothesis of the origin of the universe?
Well, I would say that there is not a being we can call a god, and that there was no creator involved in the creation of the universe as we see it today.
Very good. Now, would you also agree that the following statement is an accurate depiction of your null hypothesis? No thing and no being would be able to demonstrate that they are God.
Sure, yeah, this would be the extreme position of mine. Maybe change the word God to creator of the universe, just so that we can clarify of what God means in this instance.
Fair enough. No thing and no being may be able to demonstrate that they are the creator of the universe. Now all that's left is to show how nothing as a logical subject will be capable of creating or otherwise producing the universe as we see it today. Nothing has very many interesting and paradoxical qualities. For example, let's start by splitting one thing of nothingness into two separate things of nothingness. Mathematically, this is produced by the equation 0 is equal to 0 divided by 2, which is a true statement. This is saying that nothing split is equal to the nothing whole. But it's not just two manifestations of nothingness that are equal to the whole. It could be 3, it could be 23, it could be negative 23. There's so many things. It could be negative, it could be infinite, it could be anything except for the case of 0. But interestingly, what happens in the 0 divided by 0 equation is that it actually makes all of the things that were possible under here suddenly appear on the other side of the equation. So for all intents and purposes, let's just make this everything be two infinity symbols making an X out of each other. In other words, our universe is just one possible number from an infinite number of possibilities at the original 0 divided by 0 singularity at the beginning of the universe.
I object, you can't divide by 0.
I object, you can't divide by 0. Oh, we finally agree on something?
Cool. Objection sustained. Look, Iggy, I'll give you a chance to explain yourself, but I can't just blindly let this 0 over 0 shenanigans just slide. All of the rules of mathematics are contingent on the rule that you cannot divide by 0, because then every number would be capable of being equal to every other number. You may continue.
Mr. Deist and Mr. Devil's Advocate, this objection was expected well in advance. So rather than simply object, I will ask you guys to be a little bit more specific. We're going to create a list of things that are capable of dividing by 0. Mr. Deist, you go first.
Nothing should be able to... Wait. I suppose that if any being was capable of dividing by 0, God would be able to do it, because nothing is impossible with God. So you got me there, Iggy. No, you had it right the first time. Nothing is capable of dividing by 0.
Alright, I just add those two things to the list. God and nothing can divide by 0. Well, we already went over how 0 is the mathematical nothing. So to answer you, Mr. Devil's Advocate, the 0, in fact, can divide by 0. It is not you or me who is doing the dividing, but nothing itself. And to answer you, Mr. Deist, nothing, in fact, is God. You see, in order to maintain the belief in any other creator doing the creating of our universe, you also need to include the axiom that we are existing within a simulation, and that the afterlife is exiting the simulation of a sort of heaven or hell, or otherwise higher dimension in the real world.
Man, you're weird. You're practically making a deity out of a literal nothing. A nothing that I don't even think exists.
We had two deities, actually.
What?
Well, they just emerged from the math. The 0 divided by 0 needs two zeros in order to function. So I named the top 0 Zilch and the bottom 0 Nada. Very fitting for gods of nothingness, if I do say so myself. Sure, the split nothingness can be equal to the whole nothingness, but I figured it's a lot easier to imagine if the nothingness was already split to begin with. And if anyone asks me if I actually think that Zilch and Nada actually exist, I just show them this equation. 0 is equal to 0, I. Those are also equal to each other. It doesn't matter if the nothingness is real or imaginary. They actually intersect at 0. So if you want to view Zilch and Nada as real, they are there. If you want to view them as imaginary, they are also there. Is God actualized in reality? That is the question posed by the court today. I say 0 to the 0th power. And 0 to the 0 power in binary is equal to 0 and 1. Both no and yes. Is nothingness actualized in reality? I can also say 0 to the 0th power. We could say nothing is God, and we can also say nothing is God. It is the paradoxical objective truth of reality that is summarized in one simple statement. If no one thing is capable of knowing everything, then nothing is capable of knowing everything, which makes nothing omniscient. If it is true, as we commonly say in English, that nothing lasts forever, then nothing is eternal. And if no thing is capable of being everywhere at once, then nothing is capable of being everywhere at once, making it omnipresent. Nothing is the only thing that I can see that I am Gnostic of. This is why I identify as Iggy the Ignostic. If the two of you want to go on debating about some untestable claims about the nature of the origin of the universe, in the origin of our appears to be shared reality, you can be my guest. Iggy out!
Yeah, sorry about that. He's an upcoming philosopher, and sometimes he's a little bit over the top. But if you take a naturalist view, you can view his interpretation of nothing as some hypothetical perfect vacuum energy that exists at both the beginning and the end of the universe that would result in a perpetual cycle of the universe from nothing into nothing. The alpha and the omega, so to speak. I'm still agnostic on his claims, though. Well, why didn't he just say that? That actually makes a little bit of sense to me. Yeah, no, I'm going to stick with my personal somethingness of a deistic God belief. At least then I can allow the meaningfulness of life to actually mean something. You know that we can make our own meaning of life for ourselves, right?
That video is also in the playlist.
Right, let's not get into that. Well, since Mr. Deist opted not to use Iggy's help and the defense recanted their prosecution, Mr. Deist, would you like to give a final defense for all potential creators of the universe? Nothing long or anything, but I will give it my best shot. The truth is, Your Honor, we don't know what happened at the very beginning of the universe. But since we are entities of somethingness, it stands to reason that we are from a somethingness. The first cause of the universe has to be from something. Everything cannot just come from nothing.
Actually, this proposition inserts the axiom that we are in fact entities of something. It negates the possibility that we are in fact entities of nothingness. And the possibility that our reality is in fact an illusion created from our chaotically split minds of nothingness. Kant was such an inspirational philosopher.
Can it, Iggy? This is my time. For the appeal to the judge who I assume is more in tune with reality, hear me out. There is an infinite number of potentially correct candidates for something that can be deemed a god. Using Iggy's terminology, there are infinitely many ones out there, but zero, on the other hand, is an absolute. There is only one zero to contend with all of these possibilities of one gods. Like, the one is unknown, but the zero is certain. This is what I mean whenever I say it takes more faith to be an atheist than a deist. The absolute zero is only one explanation, and it would take a faith of sorts in order to believe it. It makes a heck of a lot more sense to bet on the plethora of potential creators and lump them all into one vague term, God, than to put your bets on a single outcome of no creator. And on that, I guess the defense rests. You know I am open to taking the evidence for any particular God conclusion, right? If you want to consider my zero stance of faith, I would just like to point out that I am also open to all of the one conclusions out there, just like you. I'm just also open to the zero stance and to acknowledge the benefits of not putting a one in the place where there might be a zero. Iggy appears to be the one who is putting his faith in the zero conclusion. Fair enough. So I guess I have a smidge more faith than you for excluding the zero outcome as a possibility. But, if the zero conclusion is correct, then I can call this nothingness God and make God necessarily exist by definition. So God can exist in a non-existent state, as all things are possible with God, making God necessarily exist. Checkmate, atheists! I think we're ready for the official verdict. In the case of King Lord Yahweh, Abba, Allah, Adonai, El Shaddai, Eloheim, Jehovah, the first and the last, you are not the father of Jesus, or anybody, because his nature is logically contradictory and lacks in any good substantial evidence that any honest court would accept for his existence. This God is not dead, because he was never alive to begin with.
Well, actually, there are 4 other equations that are also equal to absolutely everything. And here they are all at once. 0 divided by 0, infinity minus infinity, negative infinity plus infinity, 0 times infinity, and 0 times negative infinity. Those 4 are all capable of being equal to absolutely everything. Another interesting thing about 0 is that you cannot tell if it actually if it has a very slight positive or negative charge, because it is indistinguishable from an infinitesimal. So it could be actually negative 0 and be positive infinity, and it could also be just a slightly positive 0 and really be negative infinity. Or it could be an actually true 0 and actually be 0. And for all 4 of these equations, if the Christian was actually able to elevate the devil to be some sort of deity also, rather than just be a underling of an angel of sorts, they could have him be the negative
infinity that counterbalances the positive infinity of God, and have them both together give us everything. Or even funnier, you can just get rid of God altogether and just worship the devil, because 0 times negative infinity is also equal to everything. But even with these other equations, it would still give us nothing about the creator God being named Yahweh, or give any ramifications that this life will have on the eternal afterlife. So this could likewise be used to defend the existence of a yin-yang balance of everything. This is just to give apologists some food for thought so that they can actually contend with me whenever I go up against them. We will call this contending a quack battle, where 2 quacks quack at each other and see who can quack the better. Or we could have a friendly 2-way conversation of sorts. Email me to coordinate. Iggy out! I should have demanded order in this court, but we're almost done, and
Iggy is me!
in the case of the deistic creator God of the universe, you might be the father. I knew you were cheating on me! Wait, might be? Well, that's a very unsatisfactory verdict. But if the court isn't willing to at least acknowledge the possibility of our universe being created by some creator God, and that our universe is intelligently created and designed, I suppose that'll have to do. And since I'm the defendant of this deistic creator God of the universe, what does that entail for me? It means you're not guilty of believing total nonsense. But it's a good thing that you changed your position at the last second, otherwise you would have been guilty of nonsensical and harmful claims against the plaintiff. I do forgive you for those past trespasses, by the way. No hard feelings from me. Just don't believe things that are false and could be potentially detrimental to your fellow man. That is the whole reason why I named this channel Death of a Notion, to kill the bad ideas that people hold. I may not always bring the death of a notion to other people, but as for myself, I regularly make a habit of changing my mind whenever sufficient evidence is brought forth to prove my way of thinking wrong. No idea is too sacred for me to question. Court is adjourned. This is the end of the video, but I wanted to give a little bit of an emotional consideration to any friends or family who knew me in the past as Mr. Christian. Since this video officially marks me declaring myself to be an agnostic atheist? No. Dimensionalist? Maybe. Agnostic nihilist? Yeah, that. I am officially an agnostic nihilist. I am not a Christian. But I will give you a quick and honest chronology of where my beliefs have shifted over the past 5-7 years, since I have been pretty silent on it for a while. The first belief that I would consider Christianity that I removed from my repertoire was the belief that Jesus could come back at any time. In 2015, I went through the Bible cover to cover twice, and in it I wrote 2 whole composition books worth of important verses that came up. So if I found an important verse, I just jotted it down so that I would remember it better. I officially left the Assemblies of God Church, of which I was a part of, because my dad was a pastor of the Assemblies of God denomination. I left that church because of this belief of dispensational premillennialism, the pre-tribulation rapture, and also because my mom was being kind of racist towards my newlywed wife, Kaida. So I was like, hell to the no, and I was just like, just remove myself from the Assemblies of God because of those 2 things. So in the Assemblies of God, there is this university affiliate section called Chi Alpha, and that is the group that me and Kaida were a part of. And my mom tried to pressure these Chi Alpha leaders with some honor your father and mother rhetoric. So after all of that, the Assemblies of God just had a bad taste in my mouth. So Kaida and I left for a non-denominational church, which even now, as an agnostic nihilist, I would say that that church is still pretty good as far as churches go, even though they preach partial and complete truths, but it's kind of inevitable whenever it comes to religion like that. We attended that non-denominational church until Palm Sunday of 2018, and that was the last Sunday that we regularly attended church. During my time at that non-denominational church, I continued to find even more internal consistencies within the Bible, which is bound to come up whenever you read the whole Bible cover to cover a couple times. There just became too many internal contradictions to be able to accept the Bible as the one true, absolute thing to go off of. Basically, all that evidence piled up on the week coming up to Easter, where I had to ask myself, if the Bible is fallible, how can I continue trusting it as a sole source of absolute truth? Admitting that to myself hurt a little bit because I considered myself an avid, self-motivated Bible scholar. And losing that objective and absolute truth in my mind caused me to go through a grievance of sorts. It took me a couple years after that for me to re-find something else that engaged my curiosity and drove me to learn more. So in that summer of 2018, I essentially became a deist without knowing what the term was, and I didn't find out that that was the term for what I was until September of 2018. And around September of 2018 is whenever I started coming up with the concept art of For Death of a Notion, which you can kind of see in the intro of me saying, oh, here's the ideas of the right and here's the ideas of the left, and this is going to destroy both of them. Because I guess in my mind, even back then, and kind of now, it's still like, what is there to actually believe in other than nothing? And during my deistic period, I shot the videos of what distinguishes a cult from a religion and how old was Jesus when he died. And those were the only two videos I shot as a deist on this channel. But in December of 2018, I asked myself this crucial linchpin question that pretty much caused my God belief to fall through the floor. And that was, if you are a Christian watching this and you knew me in the past, ask yourself this question. If we require a God for our existence, where is God's equivalent requirement for his existence? I decided that there's no good answer for that question. So after that, I became an agnostic atheist. And yeah, 2019 was kind of a formative year for my thinking and ideology, because I was asking myself questions like, how can everything actually come from nothing? And what even is truth? And then in 2020, whenever the pandemic hit, I was actually beginning to come up with a pretty decent formulated idea of how everything, nothing, and the infinite all can come together into one cohesive ideology for myself to wrap around. Let's see, I've watched every single PBS Space-Time episode, every PBS Infinite series episode, all of Sean Carroll's Biggest Ideas of the Universe series, and a lot of Neil deGrasse Tyson and other similar videos on YouTube, in addition to a deep dive into the fundamental constants and also learning about what exactly a dimension even is. I then formulated my own metaphysical theory of everything, which I called dimensionalism. And I honed in that theory down to the point that I sent it in for peer review early in 2021, but that ended up being for naught because, well, I don't even know why, because they didn't really give any feedback of why they didn't accept it into that particular journal. But here I am just trying to get that idea out into the world. I only recently discovered that the term agnostic best fits what I am, like last month, 2 months ago, April or May 2021. And now I am sure enough in my uncertainty to share my findings. I am a deist. Nothing is God. Zilch and Nada will accept us all as their null children as we die and enter the great nothingness that comes after. And there still might very well be gods of somethingness out there as well. We believe in you, almighty flying spaghetti monster. Ramen. I am an atheist. No thing will be able to come forth and be able to say this thing is a god. Every one of them are figments of the human imagination. I am agnostic. I know that we cannot know anything with 100% certainty, with nothing being the exception to this pure, objective, paradoxical knowledge. And I am agnostic. I don't know anything with 100% certainty. And from my perspective, only a fool would claim to have 100% knowledge in a claim that requires faith. So specifically to my friends and family, I still love you. You can believe whatever you want. You can stay a Christian despite what you have heard and listened to in these videos. You can go your own way, or you can, like, follow alongside me and go our own way together. If you also don't want me in your life, you're going to be the one who's missing out, not me. Just do me the courtesy of letting me know if that is what you choose to do, removing me from your life, if that's what the Lord wants you to do. And since many of my friends and family are still active pastors in the faith, I would love to have anyone's permission for me to come to their church and be an active dissenter of the sermon of your choosing. If you believe that you have the truth, asking a few questions and giving a few counter arguments will not hurt your truth. The devil's advocate asking questions should not scare you. We can work out the details later if that interests you. However, I do want to say one last thing. If you are going to stay a Christian and you will be distressed at me coming out as not a believer anymore, I would like to attempt to add one more truth ideology to your personal repertoire so that you can go on without being super distressed about my personal soul's eternal outcome. I'm going to read this one word for word straight from the script because I think it's really important that I give you the best chance of actually accepting this truth. I believe in the multiverse. Every possible way that can happen will happen. For you, if you choose to believe in a multiverse created by King Lord Yahweh, that means that there are other Timmys out there who still believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light, and the sole means of salvation. We will see each other on the other side, in heaven, singing praises to God for all eternity. You can believe that all Christian Timmys will consolidate into one cohesive entity that all of the Christian yous will be able to enjoy and know together for eternity. Or maybe every individual Timmy will stay together and you will have an infinite amount of Timmy. Endless fun. So if you skip universalist doctrine and go straight to multiversalist doctrine, we will both be singing what a day of rejoicing that will be in heaven one day. I want you to believe true things, but I also want you to be happy while you are here. Your own subjective interpretation of the truth and your own subjective happiness are up to you now. Peace be with you. And to everyone else, as I usually say at the end of these videos, if you would like to become more enlightened, depressed, enraged, or thoughtful with us, depending on your previous notions, please do us a giddy and click on those like and subscribe buttons to join the fellow sea creatures who live in the Notion Ocean. I've got a few ideas for more atheistic content that I've been putting on the back burner until I finally came out as a kind of atheist. I'm still kind of an atheist. Agnostic nihilist. It'll be fun to have this kind of level of creative freedom to say actually what I think in my videos rather than hiding behind a let's go one way or the other whenever I actually... It's hard to completely remove one's own bias completely because there's still the own ideologies that I have whenever I make my stuff. It'll be nice to finally have an in-group to which to be a part of rather than try to disassociate myself from our parties and say like, no, you're a bar throne. Now I could say, you're most likely right, but you could still be wrong in this aspect. It'd be nice to actually have a little bit of a founding on which I can agree with people on. And until next time, kumbaya, mother duckers. Should Iggy do something interesting? Like maybe just slap his nipples? Yowza! You know, Kata said I won't get sex anymore because I got suspenders. She made a funny little song about it, but I didn't think it was very funny.